orientation here for Illinois Works. Just want to make sure that, I don't know if we want to close those doors. Want to make sure you can hear me. I don't want to use a microphone if I don't have to. Complicated to walk around. Okay, so if I have to use the microphone, I will use the microphone then. How about now? Okay, great. So I'm Norman Water, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Illinois Works. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Some of you we probably met during negotiations with the grants. But we will be spending quite a bit of time today going over some of the key items related to Illinois Works, which this session will do. I wanted to make sure that we had a clear understanding of who should be here, what this session is supposed to do for those individuals. So we designed this particular orientation for administrators, managers, and coordinators. If you are anything else, transition specialists, wraparound services, coordinators, or trainers, you can certainly be here, but it's not specifically designed for you. We have other activities today that are designed for you, and then through our onboarding process in the next couple of months. But I just wanted to emphasize that. Today, we're going to be here for about 2.5 hours. I want to make sure that it's an interactive process. If you have questions, please do not hesitate, raise your hand or make noise, whatever, so that I can see you. We would like to definitely be able to answer any questions you may have. There may be more complicated things that you asked about that we are not going to cover today. And if you do ask that, we have a parking lot here. We're going to be writing everything down. We are going to cover everything related to Illinois Works in the next couple of months. There will be several webinars that you're going to attend related to the grantee manual, IWRS, which is our technology, our reporting platform. So we will go through all of that. And if we do not go through that in the next 2 months, there'll be a significant number of webinars throughout the year, a conference, a regional meeting, Toolbox Tuesdays, which are lunch and learn activities, a variety of things that we're going to discuss today where we're going to get to all the questions you may have, okay? So again, welcome. It's our Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program Administrator Orientation. I know a lot of you came from far distances, so thanks again for making the sacrifice. These events are very important for us to get to know each other and get to know what Illinois Works expectations are. So today we're going to introduce you to the team that you're going to be working with throughout the year. You're also going to hear from each other, get to know who you all are, and then we're going to cover some key and very relevant aspects of Illinois Works, but as I said earlier, not all in detail, okay? So again, Norman Ruano, Deputy Director of the Office of Illinois Works. I'll give you a little bit of history on my background. So I'm not a government administrator by trade, okay? A lot of people think that all of us that work in these types of programming have been with government for a long time. I have not. I spent about 20 years doing workforce development on the ground, particularly at community colleges and at another college. I've done every imaginable type of program out there in workforce development, probably several hundred programs designed, developed, got funding, secured about $70 million worth of funding for our programming, trained about 50,000 people in Chicago and the metro area. Done this type of programming for 20 years, know the program well, on the ground, working with people, with partners, with community members, doing that type of work. So when you talk to me, just remember, I'm not your typical government administrator. I actually have done workforce development on the ground, and I'm really proud of the work that we have done through that. With me today are two other individuals that are going to be part of this presentation. Dan Martinez, who's one of our grant managers. Dan, why don't you stand up and just mention a little bit about
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Very excited for you all to be here. This is always one of my favorite activities, launching the new grant year. And so I appreciate, I know there was a little bit of snow, so I appreciate everyone being here. we're on a nice warm day and extremely warm here, but anyways, welcome.
Great, thank you, Dan. Also with me today, and she's going to be facilitating some activities, is Dr. Anna Badar, who's a training analyst and program coach.
Good morning, Anna Bedard, and I'm super excited. It's my first year with the program, but I too, like Norman, have been on the ground. I worked in nonprofits for about 15 years, and then I was co-founder of a Center for Nonprofit Effectiveness, where I was doing nonprofit capacity building for many years. More recently in corporate sector, and super excited to be back in the nonprofit space. So it's so nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Anna. So the team that's going to be working with you this whole year and until eternity is myself. I mentioned who I was, Dan Martinez, who's our grant manager. You will hear next week officially from Illinois Works who your grant manager will be. We have 3 grant managers that will work with grantees this year, so you'll know next week who the grant manager will be that you're going to be working with. We also have Steve Scott here with us today, who's a grant manager. Steve, say hi.
How's it going, everyone? Today is my 4th month anniversary. Pretty excited about the program. I have 38 years of government experience, so unlike Norm, I am government administrator. Experience, but also my education. People is I'm part of one of the people who work in the events degree. So yeah, I'm pretty. Before I got here, it was unlike Norm. It was oversight of these programs and grant programs and things like that. So it's my experience, and we got march on.
So Steve is our in-house federal grant expert. So any questions related to federal stuff, obviously Steve is the one that helps us with that. We also have Monica Pruitt, who's another grant manager. She was headed over here from Springfield. She's located in Springfield, but unfortunately weather did not allow. Monica has 15 years of experience in grant management, particularly with the state, several of those in workforce development. So if Monica is one of your grant managers, you will also hear from her later on in one of the activities that we have planned. I already introduced Dr. Anna Bedard, who's a training analyst and program coach. Dr. Verily Robinson is on the cloud. Verily, can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. Hey, everyone. How are you today? Welcome. Welcome and congratulations on the next steps in your journey. Glad to have you all here.
Thank you, Verily. Verily is again a training analyst and program coach. We also have Dr. Gia Suggs here, who's a professional development lead. She's in charge of all of our professional development, training analyst, and also program coach. Gia, can you please say hi to the audience?
Everyone, welcome. Glad to have all of you here.
Great, thank you much. We also have Victor Castillo, who's also with our team, one of our consultants that helps us with these events, but also other activities at the Office of Illinois Works. Victor, say hi, please.
Good morning, everyone. See you all, Matt.
So that's the team that you're going to be working with. We have obviously a lot more people that are part of Illinois Works. We have 3 different programs. You will probably hear from some of them as we do training throughout the year. Some of those programs are very important to understand. If you're part of the Illinois Works system, those programs will also support your efforts. Victor Castillo is also one of the consultants that supports our career services team, and we will talk about that in a few minutes. You know, Illinois Works is a very new system within Illinois. It's a comprehensive workforce development system, but it's fairly new. It was passed into law in 2019 as a result of a program called Rebuild Illinois. How many of you have heard of Rebuild Illinois? A lot of you have heard about Rebuild Illinois. So Rebuild Illinois is Governor Pritzker's capital investment program, $45 billion to be spent on roads, bridges, high schools, hospitals, community centers, facilities like this one, universities, colleges, all of that. And Rebuild Illinois paved the way for Illinois Works. When Rebuild Illinois was passed, in 2019, the requirement was that there was also a workforce development system that was created to support Rebuild Illinois and to support the construction industry. So that's how Illinois Works came about. And they passed what's called the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act in 2019 that created the whole infrastructure for us. The program that you're going to be part of, it's part of that system. But more importantly, they also put together the funding for that to be a sustainable funding mechanism for years to come. So we'll discuss those in a minute. I just wanted to make sure that you had a little bit of background for those that have not heard this. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about some of the key components of Illinois Works, some of the key programmatic elements. Illinois Works, unlike other pre-apprenticeship systems, is a structured model, meaning we have minimum standards for a lot of things. And you will hear about some of those minimum standards today, but as we give you the training in the next 2 months, you will really learn the details of how Illinois Works operates. It's not, again, in my previous life, I've worked with Youth Build, I worked with other apprenticeship systems. Youth Build is fairly structured. Other systems are not. Illinois Works is a very structured system, so we'll discuss what that means for all of you. So in terms of our objectives today, very, very important that you know what we're going to be covering. Connect with other pre-apprenticeship program grantees. A lot of you are new into our system, so we want to make sure that you get to know each other. Update you on the calendar of key dates for the program. It's important that particularly some of the events that we have live, that you know when they happen, so that you can schedule your staff, yourselves, because those events are all required. Describe the role of Governor Pritzker's $45 billion capital plan, and I will talk a little bit more about that and the different components of Illinois Works. We'll talk also about the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act. We're going to talk about the 3 key programs of Illinois Works and how they relate to each other, what they do for the pre-apprenticeship program. We're also going to discuss the quarterly administrator meetings that we hold so that we update administrators and get feedback from them on various things related to Illinois Works. We're going to talk about the Illinois Works Grantee Manual. This is something that is going to keep on coming up and coming up and coming up because the Grantee Manual is the one that compiles all the guidance related to Illinois Works, processes, procedures, tools, best practices related to Illinois Works. We're also going to discuss the Illinois Works technology besides the Illinois Works reporting system, which is the tool that is used for reporting. I see that there are some individuals here that are actually already part of the network of Illinois Works, and they can tell you about the Illinois Works reporting system, how it operates, but we will give you some pretty in-depth understanding today and some of the other technologies that we use at Illinois Works. The other thing is we're going to discuss extensively professional development and how we at Illinois Works structure philosophically what we believe in terms of professional development and your engagement with it. And then we're going to talk about our model of outcome-based grant reimbursement, which is a little different than other models that you might have seen out there. Any questions about any of those objectives before we get going? One thing you should know is that we're going to be recording this session and it will be made available. I will mention one of the first technologies now. You should have received yesterday a list of links with a variety of information and resources. One of the links that you received has to do with our partner guide. The partner guide is our depository of information and resources for all of our grantees. So this recording will be made available in the partner guide in a couple of days. So if you want to go back and review it, you certainly can. Everything else that we do and record will be made available to you there at the partner guide. Any questions before we move on and I pass it along to Anna Bedard here? Questions, comments? If there are no questions or comments, it's all yours. Oh, yes, go ahead.
We didn't receive the links that were sent out.
We send those to the administrator, right?
Everyone that was registered For this, we had sent an email out, but we certainly will send them again. And I will, give you, we'll see if we can make more copies. I actually have a paper copy available. But did anyone else receive the links? Who did receive the link? So.
There's an attachment.
Sure, sure.
There, so you won't see it in the body of the email. You'll see that I'm turning today and then that's attached to it. So it's a separate attachment.
Yeah.
I
didn't get that, and I will soon see it next time.
Okay. What's your organization?
YMCA.
YMCA. Okay, so we'll make sure that we send those to you.
And we didn't just send it to the administrator, we sent it to whomever had registered, but obviously somehow you're, didn't get it, we will definitely get it.
You're there.
This attachment, I don't know if they have to them.
Okay. So maybe it went to spam, but we will resend that anyway, just make sure you have it. Okay, any other questions or comments before I pass it along here? Great, thank you.
Wonderful. So now we're gonna have a chance, to see who's in the room. So we're gonna play a quick game and then we'll do introductions more informally. And sort of thing, but this is, who's ever heard of the stand up game? Stand up if, okay, a couple people, not me. So how it works is I'm gonna say stand up if, and then I'll say something, and then if that's you, please stand up. Then I'll give you a second, because it's a nice way to kind of have a little fun and also identify some people maybe you want to connect with, you know, or give you something to talk about. So, stand up, get ready. Is there anybody here who can't stand up? I actually recently been the second, so I will be, raise your hand if that's you, okay? Stand up if you are the actual administrator, have a title administrator for your organization for the degree apprenticeship grant. Great. Look around so you can see who each other are, because we want you to be each other's support. Awesome. You can sit back down. Thank you. Stand up if you've administered other state grants in the past. Right, Brad? Wonderful. Thank you. Sit down. Stand up if you have worked at your current organization for more than 3 years. More than 3 years. All right. Thank you. My screen just went blank. Stand up if your organization is downstate. We lost our downstate folks. I heard it was horrible, horrible today. Stand up if your organization is in the city of Chicago proper. Thank you. Sit down. Some people are getting a lot of exercise. Stand up if your organization is in the suburbs of Chicago. Awesome. Where did I miss? Is there part of the same? Where did I miss?
Rock Island County area.
Stand up if you're in the Rock Island County. All right, stand up if you have a nickname that you go by. Nobody has a nickname? Is there anybody here who is not afraid to tell us your nickname?
My mother's side of the family will call me Dio, and my father's side of the family will call me Little Bit.
Awesome.
My parents call me Jingle. I was born in October, and my grandfather raised me somewhat in the early years, and in December he would sing Jingle Bells and.
All right, stand up if you are good with numbers. Pretty good with numbers here. Might be that. All right, sit down. Stand up if you're a sports fan. All right, sit down. Stand up if you are a musicals fan, like whether it's a Disney or Broadway musicals. Yeah, I think. That's it. Stand up if you love this job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sit down, and lastly, stand up if you like to mentor others. Thank you, and wonderful, and everyone here. Thank you so much. Please sit down. And now, so we're just going to go around, table by table, and I'd like to please stand when you just say your name and organization. We'll try to do this quick. One does a lot to go through, and we'll start with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manola Gracia. I'm with the Clark County Urban City.
Morning, everyone. My name is Shukra Cannon. I'm from Clark County.
Greetings, good morning. Happy Thursday. My name is Anderson. I'm from Clark County.
Morning, everyone. My name is Melissa. I'm from Clark County. Morning, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm with the Clark County.
Okay, Sam.
I'm Sarah Cleveland with American Jobs.
I'm Lori Warren with the American Job Center.
JP Livingston, American Job Center.
Good morning, I'm Sheree.
I'm Jennifer Garfield, Foundation. I'm Mary Lou at Edison College and Booth University.
Good morning, Harold Williams with IWE at St. Augustine and New England.
Good morning, Lisa Lemon, saying IWE at St. Augustine College and University. My name is Sherman Hooded. I'm also with IWE at Students College at Lewis University.
Joe Chapa, IWE at St. Augustine College at Lewis University.
Thank you.
Rebecca Stallman from the YMCA of Chicago.
Melanie Bruce, also YMCA of Metro Chicago.
I'm Jenny Ferrer with the YMCA of Metro Chicago.
Tina Hone, YMCA from Chicago.
Good morning, everyone. Also with the YMCA Metropolitan Chicago, LaShonda Hayes.
Teacher been for YMCA of Metropolitan Chicago.
Thank you. Back table.
Francie Sternbach with the Women's Innovation. Gail Newcomb with the Women's Innovation. Just on Onboarding with the
Fair Advocacy Innovation Group.
Maria Petrovich with the Women's Innovation Group.
Bill, Fellow Family Resource Center, the best organization under the sun. And if we can't do it, I need
We ain't sweating.
Corey Buchanan, Chicago and Brigham Young.
David Johnson, Chicago.
Jackie Lawson, Foundation of Skills USA, out of Peoria.
Roger Sosa, Metropolitan County Circle.
Thank you so much, all of you. It's really exciting to have you here. And now I just want to, I want to give you an opportunity to say, what is it that you are hoping and expecting to get out of today's session? Anyone? There's no wrong answer.
a clear understanding of exactly what you want from us. That's okay.
Right.
We're looking for a clear understanding of like how we're actually going to be reimbursed and.
Yep. Reimbursement. How will you be reimbursed?
Basically, just confirming existing procedures and any updates to.
Great. Confirming procedures and then updates. We're going to see that table.
Looking to also updates and also connecting with other grant fees.
Great, connect with fellow grantees and.
Share best practices for like program successes.
Great. I'm sorry. What else?
We'll also like to understand some of the challenges faced, so we can reduce any of those areas that you right now.
Yeah, great, understand the challenges, right, so you know how to overcome them. Who else?
A clear understanding of what forms of paperwork is needed.
Yep. Forms and paperwork. Who else? What else? All right, I'm gonna actually ask Norman. This was like, what a great list.
Yeah.
What are we asked, going to be able to do, and whatever we can't, we will make sure that you get, but it might not be today, so we're gonna let you share.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Thank you, Anna. We are going to be covering all of this. One important thing to keep in mind, as I mentioned, we only have 2 hours today, so we're not going to go in depth into everything related to 11 words. However, we will touch on all of that, and then as we do the rest of the onboarding in the next 2 months, you will hear all the details related to everything related to 11 words. One thing I wanted to say before we get going to the next section is, even though Illinois Works is fairly new, as a pre-apprenticeship program, this is our third program year. So we've had 2 full program years, collected data, used the technology, followed all the practices. We every year collect feedback from all of you through evaluations, through very structured approaches. So if there's anything that you encounter as you're working with Illinois Works, you want us to know, or you have recommendations for improvement, please let us know. We have a rolling process where we keep all the recommendations, and then we structure a meeting in September that starts to look at all of it related to technology, related to processes, procedures, and we discuss them. And if we get the green light from legal and our director's office, then we'll proceed and update our guidance and our grantee manual, all of that information. So I really encourage you, as you encounter us, to keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to say, again, even though we are a fairly new system, when I came on board, the first conversation I had, actually, 2 conversations I had was, I got a call from USDOL and from USDOT. And they said, how are you going to fix what we know are the main problems for the pre-apprenticeship programs in the country? And they gave me a list of 6 things and said, anything you do, make sure that you address these things. And I can tell you, we did. And we will discuss as we move forward what those things are. The other thing that I learned very quickly when I came on board was, they're watching us very closely, because Illinois Works is the largest state-funded pre-apprenticeship program network in the whole country. Right? And they're watching us to see what we're doing to ensure that the practices are appropriate. They can refer these practices to other states. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we were notified that USDOT and USDOL has put together a report to U.S. Congress about best practices in workforce development. And Illinois Works was cited 15 times in the report as a best practice for the country. So I want to make sure you understand that. Even though we're new, there was a whole history and background already with this. And a lot of what you will hear today has very important technical backing to it. So we're going to get going here with the meat and potatoes. In this section, we're going to talk about some of the organizational structure of Illinois Works, how we operate. Particularly, we're going to discuss, how we came about. We're going to talk about the 3 key programs, because that's what makes us very different. We're also going to talk about the key characteristics of our pre-apprenticeship program. We're going to talk about our goals and continue to identify members of the team and what their role is as we move forward in implementing this system. As I mentioned, you received via email several documents. One of the documents that you should have received is the governor's 5-year economic plan. You should have also gotten a copy of the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act. I mentioned earlier that we came about as a result of the Rebuild Illinois program. One key thing to emphasize about that is because we came about like that, our funding mechanism is a sustainable funding mechanism, okay? One of the key problems with pre-apprenticeship programs, at least in my 20+ years of experience, is that a lot of times these programs will come funding for a year or two and disappear, right? I mean, you did a great job and then 2 years later, gone. That's not the case with Illinois Works, okay? Illinois Works is part of a law that gives us an appropriation on a yearly basis of $25 million for grants alone. So we have enough money to fund all of our capacity and all of our programs throughout the whole state of Illinois, and that comes on a yearly basis, okay? So if you're thinking, I'm gonna get involved in this and I wanna do a good job, but I don't know if it's gonna be around in 2 years, that's not the case with Illinois Works, and I wanted to emphasize that, okay? One of the key things about these laws that were passed is that the focus is to ensure that we have a sustainable talent pipeline for construction. You know, the construction industry is experiencing very similar patterns in demographics that other industries are experiencing. So we have a lot of people that are retiring out of construction, moving out of the state, and the talent pipeline in construction is in question. So the question is, if the state is investing $45 billion in 5 years, and the feds are giving us $5 billion extra through their infrastructure bill on a yearly basis, $20 billion in 4 years, who's gonna do the work, right? Do we have the talent pipeline? And some people can say, okay, let me pull the statistics for Illinois and say, yeah, we have so many workers. And the question that I get asked all the time from contractors is, where are they located? Are they located in central Illinois? Are they located in southern part of the state? Are they located in the area where you ladies operate? Where are they located? Or are they all located in Chicago and the metro area, right? So when we're talking about talent pipeline for construction, we have to talk about talent pipeline throughout the whole state of Illinois, because those $60 billion that are going to be invested are being invested all over the state, right? Not only in the metro area. So sustainability in terms of talent pipeline is vital for us. But more importantly, and that's where Illinois Works really comes in, is ensuring that we have an equitable talent pipeline, okay? So one of the key things in Illinois is that there are groups that are seriously underrepresented in construction. For instance, women represent almost 51% of the population in the state, only 6% of all construction apprentices in the state. It's a huge gap of representation there. And, you know, as we discuss with all kinds of stakeholders, you know, some people say, no, women don't want to do these jobs. And my response is always, that's a decision they have to make. My job is to let them know about the opportunities, how the construction industry operates, how it pays, the benefits. They have to decide if they want to come to the construction industry or not. But the minute that middle school girls or high school girls or even college students do not find out about construction, particularly women, and we're making decisions for them, that's when we're no longer being equitable about access, right? Those are decisions they have to make. And my job is to make sure that all women find out about construction and they make the decision if they want to be here or not, right? But the other groups, you know, we have African Americans that are seriously underrepresented in construction. You know, only 8% of all apprentices in the state of Illinois are African American. They represent 13% of the Illinois population, so they're underrepresented. Other groups are evenly represented. Hispanics are evenly represented in construction, but they are concentrated in trades that pay low wages, right? We have trades in construction that pay $75 an hour, $80. When you have Hispanics concentrated in labor trades that are paying $25, $30 an hour. So that's also underrepresentation. And on we go. Veterans are also underrepresented in the state of Illinois. So when it comes to Illinois Works, the particular populations that we focus on are underrepresented populations, women, minorities, veterans, not exclusively. We are state funded, so anybody that needs assistance, we will provide assistance, although those are the focus populations that we are mandated to serve. So again, the focus of the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act is to provide contracting and employment opportunities to historically underrepresented populations in the construction industry. And as I said earlier, it was passed in 2019. You should have received a link in case you want to take a look at the law itself. Now, one thing to emphasize here about Illinois Works is that it's a very innovative workforce development model. In fact, when I was tapped to come and serve in this role, that's the reason why I came, because of the innovation of the model itself. So typically what you find in workforce development is a talent pipeline. For those of you that have worked in workforce development, you know, you recruit people, you train them, and then you work and find them a job, right? Well, what they did in Illinois Works in structuring this law was that they added 3 components that work together under the same umbrella to address all of the needs that you could have in terms of workforce development. So the first one is job demand. So there is a program under my bureau that I oversee. It's called the Apprenticeship Initiative that is focused on creating job opportunities, okay? And we do that by requiring that any contractor that is executing a project that is at least $500,000 that is being funded by the state of Illinois, that they are required to hire apprentices. And as of now, the governor just passed an update to the law, July 29 of 2023. Half of those apprentices have to come from our programs. Okay? So now contractors, because they have to comply, this is not when you like to, this is you have to comply. Now contractors are looking for graduates of Illinois Works. Okay? So our career services team, I mentioned earlier, Victor Castillo is one of the consultants of that program. We have a new team that is being structured to provide support to our graduates, to your programs, contractors. So when contractors come to us and say, I need, I don't know, 2 apprentices in Rockford, I need 3 in Springfield, I need 5 in Chicago, they will come to us and through our platform request individuals, and then our job is to do job management for them, so that they can then get the graduates that they need. That's a very important program, right? So I have a whole team of people that work on compliance. Right now, we're watching the compliance of about $12 billion worth of projects that are being executed in the state. They're hundreds of projects. And Maria Perez, who's here today, she's the senior manager in charge of that program. Her team is in charge of just making sure those projects are compliant with those requirements, right? So again, that makes this model very innovative. So the talent pipeline is through our pre-apprenticeship program, which is the program that you're part of. And we'll talk about that most of the day today and for years to come. But the third component is also very innovative, very important. And that's an incentive for hire and retention. So if a contractor then hires and retains one of our graduates, they can earn big credits. And big credits are virtual dollars that they can get. So if they hire, let's say, Dan Martinez is one of our graduates, they hire him as a, I don't know, plumber. And they pay Dan $75 an hour. Wouldn't that be nice, Dan? $75 an hour. We can assure you the state is not. Contractors are not paying that. We are not paying it. That's for sure. But let's assume they hire Dan at $75 an hour. They can earn a rate of 75% of whatever they pay Dan in big credits, right? So if they pay Dan, while Dan is in his apprenticeship program, they pay Dan $400,000. They can earn $300,000 in big credits. And the way the big credit program works is like a bank, right? So contractors sign up, they get a bank account, and then every month they submit documentation saying, I have Dan working for me, he's one of your graduates. In fact, here's his ID number. You can verify that he's one of your graduates. You owe me $20,000 worth of big credits for Dan. We will verify payroll records, because we have access to all the IDOL data where we can see payroll. Is Dan really employed there? How much money is Dan making? Is he really working as a plumber? We can verify that independently. Once we verify that, we'll deposit those bid credits to that contractor account. They can go into their account and see all of the deposits. And then they can request, so why are bid credits so important for contractors? They can use those bid credits to bid on projects that the state has, right? You know, contractors have to bid on projects, right? If they have bid credits, the bid credits will reduce the amount of their bid by the total dollar of bid credits they're attaching to a bid. So let's say if let's assume that they're bidding on a $1 million project. If they use $1,000, I'm sorry, $100,000 generated by Dan for them, they would attach a certificate that we would issue for them that says, yes, this contractor has $100,000 worth of bid credits, and they'll attach that to their bid, and now the bidding agency has to look at their bid and say, okay, it's no longer $1 million, it's actually $900,000. So if you know anything about how contracting works, that could actually make that contractor win that bid. Okay? So as a result, that's an incentive to hire and retain. What's the other thing? So this is one of those innovative practices also, right? A lot of times contractors would hire someone and say, okay, I already have Dan, 2 months later, Dan is gone. But they fulfill the requirement of hiring. Or you guys wanted to hire someone? We hire. But what we do in our system is that they also get incentive for retention. So if Dan is retained for a certain amount of time, if Dan is retained so that he becomes a year 2 journey year 2 apprentice, year 3 apprentice, and then becomes a journey person, the contractor that does the retention receives incentives for retention, meaning they get bonuses. $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 worth of bid credits for retaining Dan. What is it that we get in return at Illinois Works? Well, we get our graduates employed, we get them to finish their apprenticeship programs and then become journey persons. And I'm going to tell you a secret after that, right? Once he's a journey person and he's employed, buying a house, buying a car, consuming in the community, the state gets tax money coming back to the state, right? It's a return on the investment, right? It's community development, it's, professional development. He has a career, we all benefit from that, right? So that's the whole idea behind this system. So again, it's a very innovative model. All of those 3 components work together in Illinois Works. It's not just the training part of it. You're working in the training part of it, but there are other programs that are supporting your efforts to ensure that your graduates have an opportunity here. So again, it's called the Apprenticeship Initiative. It's called the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program, which is the one that you're involved in. And then the third program is the Bid Credit Program. Okay. So as a result, all of these 3 components working together, it's very unique and one of a kind system. Very exciting, at least for me as a workforce professional, because it puts us in a position to be able to make a huge difference in the lives of people, right? And to really transform the construction industry to be more equitable and to have a consistent talent pipeline for many years to come. You will definitely hear a lot more about these programs and how they operate in the next few weeks as we do the onboarding. Okay. Oops. So let's talk about the program that you are part of. The Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And again, as I said, it's a structured program started on 2022. This is the 3rd program year. We actually started with 23 grantees. In 2022, we gave funding to 23 grantees. January 1st was when they all started. Some of you that are here today were actually part from the very beginning of our launching of the program. This year, the network is growing to 36. So we have a total of 36 grantees located throughout the whole state of Illinois. There are 5 different program models that we use. As we move forward, you learn more about those, but we have programs that are based and embedded in school districts. We have programs that are run by community colleges and colleges in general. We have programs that are run by business associations, and their whole infrastructure and outreach they have. And then we have programs that run in medium to large nonprofit organizations, some of them being here, the YMCA and Metropolitan Family Services being an example of those. And then we have the majority of our programs actually run by smaller nonprofit organizations, right? And those organizations obviously need a lot of support. And that's the reason why we have a very robust professional development, but we'll talk about those in a minute. So we have 36 programs this program year. It's our goal that next year, we're gonna reach capacity at this program, which is 40 to 45 grantees located again throughout the whole state of Illinois, with capacity to train 2,000 residents. Right now, this network that started this year has capacity for 1,700 community members. We are going to reach capacity next year, full capacity at 2,000 community members. Again, that makes it a very large system, really impacting every corner of the state through the Illinois Works system. So what is it exactly that we do? We do not fund programs that only provide supportive services. That's not Illinois Works. Illinois Works focuses on very robust instruction and support services. We have, you will see once we start going over the grantee manual, we will cover all kinds of supportive services, pay for them, as long as the right process is followed. But we are not only here to provide those services, we're here to really prepare people into construction, right? Skills, certifications, curricula, training is very important for us, and we will talk about some of those things. So our programs provide an array of services, but one of the key services that is provided is a stipend, okay? Now, the law says that we have to provide wraparound services. The one that specifies that needs to be provided as a minimum is a stipend, okay? And our stipends are performance-based stipends. You know how I said we have minimum standards? Performance-based, attendance, and academic performance, okay? You will notice in our grantee manual that there's a whole policy that we have there that needs to be followed about stipends. You cannot just pay someone, $2,000 as a stipend. You need to be able to pay it based on their attendance and based on their academic performance. Very generous stipend. Right? Programs can pay up to $14.25 a training hour. And I must say here, just a very important note. Please do not use the terminology of wages, salary when it comes to stipends, okay? The feds, particularly the IRS, is very strict about it. A stipend is a stipend, and there are conditions that need to be followed. In our grantee manual, we have a whole section that deals with stipends, the type of terminology you can or cannot use, how it needs to be promoted, but you cannot use wage or salary terminology when it comes to stipends. All participants are required to get a stipend. In fact, if you ever get a field monitoring visit from us, or you get an audit from DCO, it's likely going to result from stipend type of situation. We get complaints from students, and students can call us anytime they want, telling us, I got promised this, I never got it, or they told me this amount and I got this amount. Can you look into that? And that will trigger a whole action from our office, because that is the only wraparound service that the Illinois Works Job Program Act names by name. Have to get stipend. There is no way around it. Okay? So just wanted to bring that up. It's a very unique part of Illinois Works, and that is the reason why our funding level is actually fairly generous. So right now, the average funding level that we have for Illinois Works is $11,500 per participant, okay? It's one of the most generous funding levels that you're gonna find out there, because we understand that the structure of our programming will require resources. You will have to pay stipends, and you will need the staff in order to make this type of program work, okay? So as a summary, what is it that we do? Again, training. We provide training through a whole network of providers out there. We give preference to underrepresented populations that have historically encountered barriers for advancement in the trades, including women, minorities, and veterans, but not exclusively. If you find individuals out there in need, regardless if they belong to one of these underrepresented populations or not, it is your mandate to serve them, okay? It's important that we do that. The other thing is that it needs to be free, the tuition needs to be free, and they need to receive a stipend, as I said a minute ago. And I want to emphasize this, we do receive a yearly appropriation of $25 million to be able to pay for these services. Let me tell you something that you will quickly find out, and we'll discuss more once we start talking about performance-based models. But what we have found is a lot of organizations do a good job performing, and they generate a lot of revenue because of that, and they don't use it. And, you know, I was the first year we had almost $1.5 million left on the table by grantees. And we're like, we don't need the money. We don't need the money. In fact, if I have that money, you're jeopardizing my appropriation for the next year. Okay? If we say you have $550,000 and your performance is good enough for $550,000, please use the money. As long as you're using the money for allowable expenses, nothing crazy, believe me. If you are, you will be flagged and we will hear about it. Allowable expenses, it's in your budget, you know? You need staff, you need resources, please use the money, okay? I don't need $1.5 million extra in our accounts. We don't. We're getting money to fund these programs. If you're doing a good job out there, make sure you're using the money for the programming, okay? For the staff, for equipment, for whatever you need it, okay? Okay, so what are the ultimate goals of Illinois Works? Very important. These are our ultimate goals. This is what we live and die for on a daily basis. Provide a career pathway. And I want to emphasize that it's not just a job. It's a career pathway, okay, for residents in disadvantaged communities. Right? Career pathway means what I just mentioned with Dan. Starts as a pre-apprentice, becomes a year 1 apprentice, year 2 apprentice, year 3 apprentice, journey person. That's a career, right? They have a career in construction. I'll say something else about me. Interestingly, I'm a sociologist by training. My brother is a journeyman carpenter by training. It has been for 30 years. Right? Interesting conversation him and I have, right? But one thing I can tell you, property bought his house, raised his kids, getting ready to retire. On as a journey person for 30 years. He's done that and loved being a journey person for 30 years. Has done every imaginable thing out there in construction. And, it's a career. I mean, it's not just a job, it's a career. Provide eligible apprentices with the skills for lifelong job security. That's the other thing. So why did they don't get accepted to a DOL registered apprenticeship program? Well, we want to make sure our pre-apprentices have skills, right? Certifications, they have knowledge, they have experience. They can go work in other areas. We also want to promote construction as a viable job industry. We find that the newer generations don't know about construction. And if they don't know about it, they may not value it as much, right? But as my brother once told me, we have been building things for the last thousands of years. We will build things for the next thousands of years. So someone has to do it, right? Construction industry is the one that does that. We want to have a consistent and skilled workforce for generations to come. Again, there's a challenge with the talent pipeline in construction in Illinois. We want to be able to build that talent pipeline. And as importantly, we want to continue to build relationships with organizations, community-based organizations, and also with contractors. That's a key goal of Illinois Works. So just 1 or 2 individuals, if you could stand up and tell me. So if we are successful, if you are successful in your communities, what impact do you think we can have in your communities? Any of you? If we are successful with these goals, yes.
So our goal is to help close the African American wealth gap.
Okay.
If we close the wealth gap, we also close the health gap and all kinds of other gaps. And so that's why we're so focused on, being part of this, giving people good jobs, so they can raise families and build.
And you feel that through this tool, Illinois Works, we can help with that.
Especially with those incentives, that will help, break down some barriers in terms of getting to the African Americans.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I know specifically for Clark County, we have a younger Hispanic and African American population who are not interested whatsoever in college. And I think that if we're successful in achieving these goals, we help, like you said, return on investment, but empower them to still have that livelihood that they dream of that doesn't involve TikTok or Instagram. It's an honest, wonderful living, and it's, establish their own lives. But that's why.
You think that Illinois Works can help you with that?
Hey, Norman, can you repeat the gist of it for the people that?
So what she'll say is that they're located in Aurora. That county is located in Aurora, so they have a large contingent of young African American and Hispanic individuals that have no interest in going to college. So they're trying to provide viable opportunities for those individuals. And obviously, the trades, construction, is a great viable opportunity. It is for everybody, but particularly for the younger generations, right, to see good opportunities in that area. Thank you for sharing. Any questions before we move on to the next section? Yes, ma'am.
So, and the incentives are amazing and really visionary. One of the reasons we're so excited to apply this grant. But there's another piece of the puzzle that I'm wondering if the state can help with. The biggest challenge I understand is getting people from pre-apprenticeship into the apprenticeship program.
Right.
And in the city where, if you're not part of a union, you can't get on many construction sites. It's very hard to sort of build the right relationships with unions to take the folks. And so I'm wondering if there's any work that the state would do with Illinois Federation of Labor or others to try to create a similar incentive for the unions, construction trade unions, to take the folks who come out of the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. We give you some type of incentive because, I've also been working in this field a long time. That is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
If we can't get them into those union apprenticeship programs.
That's a good, excellent question. In the state of Illinois in general, that's the reality, right? I mean, this is labor plays a fundamental role here. Labor was involved in the negotiations for passing Illinois Works to the very beginning. They contributed feedback. They were actually during the summer when we were negotiating, updating the law. I was negotiating with them, because they are such a part of it. There are several incentives that they have, and then I'll tell you what we do in order to make those connections, okay? One of the incentives they have is that the contractors that are signatory to their programs are coming to them and saying, I need graduates of Illinois Works, right? Because the contractor has to comply. We cannot make the unions comply with us because they're regulated by the feds. And as you know, anytime the feds have, they have a finger, and Steve knows it very well. We can't make the feds do anything. So that's the reason why we can't regulate the unions, and we will never be able to do that. But the contractors, we can. And we are demanding and expecting that the contractors comply, and then they're going into those programs and say, hey, where are the graduates? Because I need them. On the other hand, our career services team, one of their responsibilities is to develop proactive relationships with DOL registered apprenticeship programs, which in the state of Illinois are mainly run by unions. And then once those relationships are developed, bring them to the ground room with grantees. In fact, Dane runs a monthly, one of the communities of practice that we're going to talk about today is one that he runs for transition specialists. And they meet on a monthly basis to see how things are going, to discuss situations that are happening with DOL registered apprenticeship programs. But more importantly, we also bring the unions to come and talk to our grantees and develop relationships with them, right? So we're facilitating through a variety of means relationships with those unions. Now, does that mean that makes it easy? No. That's one of the most complicated things that your programs will have to do. making sure that we have the relationships and ensuring that we are sharing all of that with our grantees. But I will say, so, a contractor, for a lot of unions, contractors can sponsor individuals into those programs, okay? So we created a whole system where a contractor that wants to sponsor one of our graduates can come to us and say, I'm looking for such and such individuals, and I want to sponsor them into such program, right? If they do that with us, we will then give the programs on the ground that are located in that geography an opportunity to make referrals to us so that we can refer them to those contractors. So we're coming at it from different angles, right? Because that's the way that we know can actually work. So as we continue to move forward, we'll provide more details about it, but I do understand, I mean, you hit it where, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? If you have people that are trained and are interested and qualified, but the contractors do not hire them because there are barriers in them entering the apprenticeship programs, then we're hitting the wall, right? So we definitely understand that, okay? I appreciate that. Okay, so in this section, we're going to talk about the timeline for training and also some of the other events that are happening with Illinois Works. We're going to talk about the grantee manual. We're going to talk about a particular model that we follow to make things digestible in Illinois Works. It's called the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. And then we're going to talk about some of the onboarding sessions that are coming up. Okay, so in terms of timeline here, very important, okay? All your onboarding will last until about mid-March. And you will be onboarded, you will get several webinars related to the grantee manual, our guidance, policies and procedures forms, all of that. You will also receive your grant agreement during that time. We are working right now with OGM, and in a minute I'll explain what OGM is versus us. But OGM is the one that works it's a team at DCO that works on those grant agreements. We're working with them on that. We also will have in February the needs analysis process to determine your track for professional development purposes. Okay, so I'll provide more details in a minute, but in February that whole process kicks off. So you will hear about that. We will also be providing you with a schedule of when our quarterly administrative meetings will take place. Typically, those administrative meetings take place either at a regional meeting at the conference, or we'll schedule them separately. You will also get a particular date of when our regional meeting will take place. Our regional meeting takes place here. Our annual conference takes place in Bloomington Normal. So you'll know when those will happen, and those are face-to-face events, and you will be required to be there and also to send staff. Our conference, for sure, we know will take place in October. Typically, the regional meeting takes place in April, no later than May. You will also, on a monthly basis, receive information about Toolbox Tuesdays, and those are not required, but those are lunch and learn type of events, 1 hour, where staff can join. They can just come. We talk about very particular topics. Sometimes DO registered apprenticeship programs will come and talk to our staff during those days, and we'll address issues like professional development for, how to recruit women into programs, how to recruit African Americans, how to recruit different types of populations. So that will happen typically every third Tuesday of the month. You will also hear about our communities of practice and when those meetings will take place. So we have 3 communities of practice, one for instructors, one for transition specialists, and one for wraparound service type of individuals. A lot of organizations call them case managers, right? You will also get a calendar of professional development webinars, and those are required for all grantees. Typically, we have one webinar that happens every month. You will also get your compliance reports on a monthly basis from your grant manager. Whoever is assigned to you will send you a compliance report on a monthly basis. Here's the structure of Illinois Works, and we'll discuss more of that in a minute, but you will be rated. Are you in poor progress? Are you in inadequate progress? Are you in good progress? Are you in excellent progress? you'll get a rating and you'll get reports that show why your rating is like that and what you need to do in order to improve your compliance with Illinois Works. Very important here, it's very, very important that you really get going strong with your program. We start our renewal cycle in September. So that's when we start to pull the data to see who we're gonna offer renewal to. And you need to be able to meet a certain compliance threshold in order for us to offer you renewal into the system. And again, that starts in September. And then one of the most important things that we do is our closeout process to verify all the data that you're entering. So here's something that is important, and then we'll talk about it when he talks about IWRS. You enter data in our system, we just don't take your word for it. We verify the data. And that data verification process is done on a monthly basis. And then at the end of the year, we verify your data. And when we mean verify is like, we verify your data, okay? Documentation, uploads, all kinds of things. And we go through a closeout process that starts in December and it ends in January. And after that closeout process is done, you'll get a rating for your closeout, okay? And if you don't reach a certain rating for your closeout, we're not paying your closeout monies, okay? You'll see in a minute how our formulas work. There's a certain dollar amount attached to your closeout, and you have to meet a certain threshold for us to be able to pay that, okay? Any questions about that timeline? As you can see, it's a very busy schedule, and in a minute, we're gonna talk about why is it so busy and why it is that we do that. But any questions about that? Okay, so grantee manual, the Illinois Works grantee manual. You will have a grantee manual that you will need to follow as you implement your programming. We have guidance, tools, expectations for design, implementation, and delivery of service. You will see it all there. As I said, Illinois Works is a structured model, so we have minimum standards for all of our programming areas. You certainly have flexibility in a lot of areas, like we don't tell you, you know, we have minimum standards in terms of what you need to cover in your curriculum, but above and beyond that, you can get creative, right? As long as it gets approved by Illinois Works, you're fine. And there are other areas where you can also get creative, right, in your programming, but we do have minimum standards. So we will cover all of that through the onboarding sessions that we'll be doing. The 2024 grantee manual, we publish a new grantee manual every year. So the 2024 grantee manual, it was referenced earlier by the person from Skills USA, you know, want to hear the guidance is the same as before. There are some important changes to guidance in the 2024 grantee manual. We are getting ready to publish that grantee manual. It should be published either tomorrow, no later than early next week, and it gets published and you will receive an email that says, here's the grantee manual. And then also on our platform, the partner guide, you'll be able to access the grantee manual and all the documents and forms that go along with that, okay? So what is this famous grantee manual all about, right? So this was written by Illinois Works staff in partnership with NIU in 2022, okay? In January, it has 14 content areas, it's divided by sections. Each of the sections has guidance, policies, procedures, and then it has documents, tools that go along with each of those sections. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is published every year. And the reason is because we collect all the feedback, see what works, what doesn't work, and then go through a process that we're gonna make to that manual. So this year's manual is not going to be the same as next year's manual. It'll generally be the same, but there'll be some changes for sure. So you wanna make sure that every time we publish a manual, that you stay on top of it. We provide guidance for required elements, but also recommendations based on best practice for non-required elements, okay? There are a significant number of templates, sample policies, all kinds of documents. There's probably 30, 40 different documents. Some of them are required, a lot of them are not. We're just providing, you know, sample stuff that you can use for your program. At the same time, it's important to keep in mind that because it is a significant document, we use what we call the pre-apprentice life cycle in order to manage it. So here's the pre-apprentice life cycle. You're gonna see it throughout the manual. So this cycle is the cycle that a particular individual takes when they engage the program, okay? So you have outreach, recruitment, application, intake, wraparound services, student support services, training, program completion, transition services, and follow-up. So the manual is organized around all of those things. In fact, our technology is organized around that. So if you want to really get a handle on all of the guidance and the tools and systems that we have, just follow this, because we're going to be following it ourselves. We make sure that as we teach, as we train organizations, that life cycle is very important for us. And we just want to make sure that grantees understand that. I want to emphasize something related to Illinois Works. So the law says, the Illinois Works Draft Program Act says that our primary goal, the reason for existence, is to graduate individuals and transition them to DOL registered apprenticeship programs. As a result, that's our primary goal. Right? So you will see in the manual, everything that we do, we'll always talk about that primary goal. And we pay very high fees for programs that do that. Right? Now, this year, we have two other goals that are possible. What if an individual, after they went through the whole program, says, no, now I want to be a nurse? We've seen it all, right? I actually wanted to open a restaurant from the very beginning. Okay, well, those we call secondary goals, right? And you will get reimbursement for those, not at the same level as your primary goal, but you will get reimbursement for that. This year, we started a new category based on feedback from our grantees that's called alternative construction. Alternative construction is someone says, oh, ComEd offered me a great job, making 30, 40 bucks an hour. We have a lot of our students that end up at ComEd or People's Gas or one of those utilities. In the past, we would consider those secondary goals or secondary transitions. Now we call those alternative construction. So we pay between the primary and the secondary. You'll get paid and get credit for those at that level. Okay? We also have graduates that say, well, I didn't go work for the carpenters, but the city of Chicago and their construction crews hired me. You know? Okay, so that's an alternative construction. Or in Chicago, CPS would hire a lot of our graduates to do maintenance in their schools. You know? Okay, maintenance crews for schools, for colleges, private buildings, right? So those are considered now alternative construction transitions. They're no longer secondary. Yes?
If it was maintenance or like a housing authority, would that be like the same?
That would be considered alternative construction. They're still doing construction-related work, but they're not in a DOL registered apprenticeship program. So as a result, programs will get credit for those, okay? Yes, yes.
What we've experienced is that we may have students who may register for a program,
Yes.
but it may take 8 months for them to get into that program. And as an interim, they maybe work for non-paid something like that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And that's, you know, and we need to be careful because people have lives, right? I mean, it's not like they can sit around and say, I'm gonna sit around and wait for 8 months until they tell me if I'm gonna be a carpenter, right? I mean, they need to feed their kids, themselves, pay bills, whatever. So the way we do it is, let's assume that you, while they're waiting, they go and become part of a crew for the city or housing authority, whatever. Or just you help them get a job at, I don't know, Mariana's. Mariana's all over the state. We have a bunch of them in Chicago, right? But Mariana's. Okay, well, that would be considered either secondary or alternative construction when you place them into those jobs. And the minute they get accepted into their DOL registered apprenticeship program, you will then go through the process in our reporting platform to say now they are part of that DOL registered apprenticeship program. And when Dan, if he's your grant manager, pulls your compliance report next month, he will catch that and give you credit from the secondary to the primary. So you don't lose out on that. It's actually a continuum, right? So they go secondary to primary, you will get credit for all of that.
And how long does that happen after closeout? Just think about that time, that if they go into apprenticeship in March 2025, close out and change it.
Yeah, that's another excellent question. That's another thing that we, based on feedback we got the first year, we created a system that's called carryover credit. So you could carry over that credit 2 years later. So you could still continue to work with that individual, and if 2 years later they transition to a primary dual register apprenticeship program, then you could get that credit. If you're renewed, good point. Make sure you get renewed. Your contract needs to be active. If you are renewed, good catch. Yes.
Make that up. Are we making that in Illinois Works? Are we making it in ATS? Are we doing?
But it'd be both. Still clerk's agreement that has been updated. So, you know, what we're talking about here, a combination of a lot of things. So we have that transition component, which leads to bid credit or carryover credits, and carryover credits are essentially providing you with credit for the funding reimbursement after the grant year in which that person actually graduated. So obviously, 2024, all of you in this room are, running the pre-apprenticeship programs, and your individuals will graduate, but they may not enroll into the registered apprenticeship program due to the RAP's own timeline. They may not enroll until 2025 or 2026, right? And so as long as you're renewed and active in 2025 or 2026, then you could recoup that carryover credit. And Jackie was referring to some of the different technology systems that I'm actually going to be talking about in
a minute.
So we'll talk about those more.
Yes.
I just want to clarify and make sure I know it correctly. There's a secondary goal and then an alternative construction goal, right? The secondary is pretty much important outside of construction-related field.
Yeah.
Alternative construction is like employment with corporate partners, bonding, and trend.
Right. Construction, what we call constructive behavior. The difference between primary and alternative is that primary will always have a DOI registered agreement, which is by law our primary goal. Yeah. So that's the reason why that carries a lot of reimbursement. It carries significant amounts of reimbursement. Someone else?
Yeah. Normally secondary transitions don't count to the compliance score.
That is correct.
Does the alternative construction, will that count towards compliance?
Yes, that will count towards compliance. So one of the reasons why we added compliance scoring to alternative construction is because obviously we want to incentivize this. It's not the same to go work for ComEd making $60,000, $80,000 a year than to go flip burgers at McDonald's, right? We want to incentivize that other career. I know people that have worked 40 years now. They're doing well. So that is a good career. It's just not a DOL registered apprenticeship program one. So that makes sense. Yes.
That's a question. This is our first time doing the
Yes.
program. Do a lot of people work, because looking at your cycle and it looks like WIOA to me.
Yes.
We do a lot of WIOA. Do a lot of people do this program and work in conjunction with normal this program as well. Is that common practice?
Leveraging.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, parts of this that aren't covered in this program. This, like, do people co-enroll and use this in conjunction with other programs a lot?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Actually, it comes up a lot. Yeah, so we do encourage that to happen. So here's the challenge, though, and again, because of my background in workforce development, we all has a lot of requirements for qualification, right?
Yeah.
So as long as you're able to leverage those resources without compromising who comes into Illinois Works, because for you to be part of Illinois Works, this is all you need, okay? 18 years of age, unless you're enrolled in a high school program that we have pre-approved you can run, okay? Other than that, you have to be at least 18 years of age. You have to have a high school GED, high-SIP certificate, okay? Please, for those that are on border states, you have to be serving residents in the state of Illinois.
There's no way around it. Okay? Later on, they want to move to wherever they want, that's fine, but they have to be residents of the state of Illinois. Am I missing anything? That's it, right?
No, those are the three.
That's it.
But if they could, they're eligible under the.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay with us going on like.
We're fine, as long as, you know, again, we don't compromise who comes into the program. Because that's all you need to be part of Illinois Works. Okay? Okay, so moving along, Dan. So this is the timeline. Oh, just final thing. This is your onboarding schedule here. Today, January 18th, in person, virtual, January 30th, that's when we start going through the grantee manual. Then February 6th, grantee manual. February 13th, grantee manual.
And I see some of you writing, you will receive this information, the email. I'm also gonna walk you through the partner guide where this PowerPoint will be available to you. And all of these sessions are available currently for you to register right now.
Yep.
So we'll provide that.
So now Dan will continue with the next section of our presentation here.
While Dan is coming up front,
Thank you.
take on get back.
We think are safe to make.
And Tina, I'm gonna check with you during lunch, because I have the sent file that shows that I had sent that to several. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Oh, good. Yeah. That, if that's what you registered for this session with, that's what I sent it to. But if anyone else needs the links, we have a couple pieces of paper here of the links. But again, hopefully you all had received that yesterday. All right, so obviously I'm going to be talking about our Illinois Works technology. We're going to be discussing IWRS, which is the Illinois Works reporting system. You will become very familiar with that. We'll talk about the applicant tracking system and how that's really an Illinois Works component. It applies to all three of the Illinois Works components that Norman had just discussed. So the apprenticeship program, the pre-apprenticeship program, and the bid credit program. So it's important to keep that in mind, that is an Illinois Works function, because it's such a key piece of technology that we will eventually have you working with. We'll talk about the Illinois Works heat map, and we'll describe the administrator quarterly meetings, and our partner guide. So here's just kind of an overview of that technology. Before I continue, does anyone have any questions about these technologies? I tend to just kind of move through things a little bit quickly, so I just want to make sure. So again, the IWRS, Illinois Works Reporting System, the ATS, which is the applicant tracking system, the Illinois Works heat map, and the partner guide. So we'll start with IWRS, because again, that is one that we'll be talking about pretty in depth. And then we'll go through the rest of them. So this is a screenshot of IWRS. The Office of Illinois Works, in partnership with Southern Illinois University's Center for Workforce Development, so SIU, developed the Illinois Works reporting system. It is essentially built on Illinois WorkNet. So how many of you are familiar with Illinois WorkNet? Right. So in fact, and I'm probably skipping ahead here a little bit, in order to get access to IWRS, you will all receive an email, and we'll do this by organization, asking you to set up Illinois WorkNet accounts. And then you'll send that information back to me with your staff member and Illinois WorkNet account email address. And then we will create your IWRS profiles, and then you'll have access to IWRS. Just a little bit of behind the scenes there of how that works. But that's the key point about IWRS being hosted essentially in Illinois WorkNet.
So the system was launched fully in February of 2022. And due to the custom design, it allows grantees to track the pre-apprenticeship program inquiries, applicants, participants, and graduates. And I start with inquiries because that is one of the data elements that we are required, the Office of Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program is required to report back to the state legislature. So we need to know the demographics, even of the people that are just inquiring about the report. So that's a key component of it as well. So it allows you to track the progress of your participants throughout their engagement. Again, I mentioned through an application status, through enrollment, providing them with career and support service assessments, enrolling in training modules, attendance, training completion, transition, and other information. So it is very much, identifying the work that you're doing, in person with the individuals. It's providing that information into our database. And for those of you that are familiar with PPRs, so through GATA, the periodic performance report that the state of Illinois requires, this actually provides the basis for the PPR. So rather than filling out a PPR and having a whole host of documents showing that you're, providing the PPR standards, you're essentially just going to fill out that PPR and say, entered in Illinois Works reporting system as required by the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And so then everything will be in there. Any questions about that so far? Okay. So as Norman mentioned, the IWRS is actually designed to follow the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. So obviously there's an outreach and recruitment where we're taking those inquiries, and there's an application section. I do want to point out though that it's not always circular, right, or linear if you were to put this out. There are times where you're doing things, and the one, because Norman mentioned I am the transition service coordinator point person. Transition services are the one that I'm bringing this up for, because programs should be thinking about transition services in every step of the life cycle, right? And again, I can't stress enough, Norman said it several times, but the goal of this program is to have people become journey level tradespersons. And so we have a 10-year longitudinal study that we're going to track the individuals that go through the programs. And we're going to use Illinois Department of Employment Security information, Illinois Department of Labor information. They're going to be tracked, and we're going to see the effectiveness of this program. And so I remember I was having a conversation with a grantee last summer, and they said, well, the point of this program is to get them a job, right? No, right? We certainly do support that effort, and that's a secondary transition. And as one of the participants mentioned, you don't get compliance credit for that. You get half of your funding credit that you normally would for that, and zero compliance credit for that, because what we're trying to do is help these individuals on a construction-based career path. So actually, another one of the things that we don't always say is when we say we want to transition to a US DOL registered apprenticeship program, it's a construction-based, right? So having them go into a different registered apprenticeship program in healthcare or in IT or some of the other ones that they have, those aren't the outcomes that are written into this program. So but the transition services, it's extremely important to keep that in mind when you're doing your interviews. Is this person truly interested in construction? Okay, sorry, that was my soapbox moment. So as I mentioned, Illinois Works reporting system retains this information. And so here are just some data points in terms of how we were building the system. Again, it's been live for 2 program years now. And this, I believe, is as of August of this past year, where this is, essentially where the number of participants in the system stood. So I told you before I was jumping ahead a little bit, I wanted to mention, how you will, gain access. Again, at the beginning of the year here, we will set up your organizations in IWRS, and we will enroll essentially your users in mass. And then, of course, throughout the year, you'll be able to do that on your own. So an individual, again, in June, you have a new hire, they will simply create their Illinois WorkNet account, and then the individual or individuals that have user management access, and you're going to flag that for me, and we'll set that up for you, then they will simply go into IWRS and add that person, and then they log into Illinois WorkNet, and then they're essentially logging into IWRS at that point. So any questions about IWRS? Okay. So now let's take a look at the applicant tracking system. The Illinois Works applicant tracking system allows each of the 3 key Illinois Works programs, the apprenticeship initiative, the pre-apprenticeship program, and the bid credit program, to input and access critical data and achieve the goals of the Office of Illinois Works. So this database will be the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program graduates. And it allows companies, contractors, or labor organizations to request from the Office of Illinois Works information about those graduates, right? So presumably to hire them, to sponsor them, to be able to utilize those bid credits or gain access to those bid credits, or to comply with the apprenticeship initiative. So the applicant tracking system will trace the professional qualification and trajectory of the graduates. So a lot of times, sometimes folks will ask us, well, we have some of this information in IWRS, right? We have the person's name, their phone number, their email address, their city, their residence. But then we have to re-enter some of this into the applicant tracking system. Again, IWRS is for the pre-apprenticeship program. The ATS system is for the Office of Illinois Works. But also, one of the things, again, as we go through the onboarding and you read the grantee manual, you'll come to understand is that, there's a lot of follow-up with graduates. And, the moment they graduate from their program, they could be moving or changing their cell phone number or what have you, getting a more professional email address that they want to use. So those are things that we want to retain in the applicant tracking system, as well as update into IWRS. But certainly, like with any job board, we need this to be the current contact information. And then there's some other information that it may ask, such as like how far are you willing to travel for work, and other things that you would expect a job board to ask of the graduates. So I've kind of given some of these comparisons. Both IWRS and the ATS help manage some of the data that the Office of Illinois Works requires. But while IWRS is the data management and reporting system for grantees to track the pre-apprenticeship program inquiries, it's separate and independent from the ATS, and the ATS will allow your organizations to have your graduates available as a pool of workers for contractors or sponsorship. Okay. So I just mentioned. So I'll move on. So again, contractors will want to comply with the 10% apprenticeship goal, and they will come to that ATS system. And they're currently not accessing the ATS system directly. They're going to work through our career services team. So it's not as though they just will have access to, or anyone in the public would just have access to some of the personal information of your graduates. But that's how they'll access the information through our career services team. The pre-apprenticeship programs will have a profile there, and an updated resume. Certainly, again, you'll learn through the onboarding and the grantee manual. The expectation is to assist your participants with creating a professional resume and an updated one that reflects their graduation from the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program, and including the fact that they are bid credit eligible. So that's going to be something that they'll look for. And we've had instances where some organizations have just uploaded the resume that the individual gave to them when they applied to the program, right? So that's just something I'm pointing out as one of those best practices. Make sure that's just part of your pre-apprenticeship life cycle as you go through your curriculum and your instruction, working with them on updating and having that current resume. So any questions about the ATS system? Look at that. Either I'm really thorough or you want to get to lunch. I don't know which way we're going here, but a bit of both. All right, so now we'll talk about the Illinois Works heat map. So the heat map is one of the tools that Illinois Works is making available to not only grantees, and it provides an overview of state demographic data, Illinois Works project data, the location of your programs, and the location of construction-based DOL registered apprenticeship programs. So it's a useful tool for everybody, right? If I'm an individual looking to join one of the pre-apprenticeship programs, I could go to this map and identify where your organizations are and see which one I'd like to reach out and contact. Or if I'm in one of your organizations and I want to build a stronger network with those registered apprenticeship programs, as Tina mentioned, there's sometimes it's a union-based registered apprenticeship program, and you want to develop a stronger relationship with them. This heat map we are providing as a tool for you to be able to see and access some of the ones located near you. So again, the pre-apprenticeship program, we also have the demographics. So we show the concentration of underrepresented populations. They're set up by DCO economic development regions, and we'll have some information on projects as well, construction projects. So any questions about the heat map? All right, look at this. We are running. So the Illinois Works Partner Guide, as I mentioned, that is that's hosted by Illinois WorkNet, and that is where you are going to find a lot of the information about your onboarding. When the grantee manual is published, there will be a link there to download the grantee manual. If you go there now, you can go to trainings and recordings, and all of last year's trainings are there available for you to view. Then obviously we'll be replacing those with this year's as we go. So while the expectation certainly is that when we send out registration information, the expectation certainly is that at least the relevant members from each organization do attend. If someone can't, some additional staff members can't, then you'll have that recording, or if you want to go back to a section of it, you can go back and take a look at that. So that's under the archived sections. So I'll show you a clip of it. So this, again, Illinois WorkNet, they provide the resources and technical assistance for our grantees, and you'll access this. You can access IWRS through this as well as getting to the partner guide. So the partner guide itself, a little walkthrough. Let's see. After you go, well, this is for signing up. Again, part of the step in the process, all the organizations, your staff members that need to access IWRS will need to create their own Illinois WorkNet account. So this is that step to do that. One key point I'll make on this, occasionally an individual will be told by their supervisor, oh, you need to go create your Illinois WorkNet account, and they will, but for whatever reason, they'll use their personal email address. So when you send the spreadsheet back to me of the staff members and then it has their work email address, they won't be able to connect those. So just remind them what email address they should use, or at least what email address they give to you. Because in many cases, some of your staff members may already have Illinois WorkNet accounts. So then to access Illinois WorkNet, or I'm sorry, IWRS and the partner guide, you can go through the program guides to partners, Illinois Works, and then go to the professional development where you can see again all the existing recordings and then also all the registration links for the, I believe it's 11 upcoming onboarding sessions. Well, I think there's 9 because then 2 apply just for renewal organizations. And then just a point to know, they're essentially most Tuesdays and Thursdays starting, I think it's January 30th. And they run 9:30 to 12:30, 9:30 a.m. to 12:30. So we also have a list of resources available through our partner guide. And this gives you kind of step-by-step in that life cycle of, IWRS and how to utilize it. And there's some job aids developed by SIU available as PDFs there. So any question about the partner guide? All right. The quarterly administrative meetings, grantee network progress and upcoming changes to programming, reporting, or important deadlines. It's also a time when program administrators have direct access to the deputy director to ask questions, make comments, offer ideas on how to enhance the program. So those are required meetings, very valuable for program administrators, and it's a wonderful opportunity for you as a network and us as a program administrator to communicate. So any they're obviously they're quarterly, so there are 4 a year. This year the intention is for 2 to be held virtually, 1 to be held as a regional meeting, and then 1 so in person, and then 1 to be held during the annual conference. So any questions before we go on to the next section? No? All right, perfect. I'll hand it back to Dr. Romano.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. We will quickly go over our next section, which deals with professional development. I mentioned that I will let you know what the philosophy is there. We have a very robust professional development system, and the reason is because we believe in developing the skills of the organization so that they can succeed. One of the things that we do that other programs don't do at the state is that we bring in organizations that may not be completely there when they apply. And through our needs analysis, we find out what their needs are and then bring them in through special tracks. We'll talk about tracks in a minute. but that allows us to then have access to those organizations to train and coach and give them all kinds of assistance. So with the goal of them becoming high-performing grantees in the future, not only for the boards, but for the state in general. So that's the philosophy. We spend a lot of resources, time and effort in developing grantees. Obviously, you know, I have a background in education, and as a result, I believe in education, so that's also part of it. But it's really important to develop the capacity of our grantees. So you will hear at Illinois Works that there's a big difference between professional development and technical assistance. For us, professional development is what we're doing strategically to develop capacities, be it through coaching or webinars, communities of practice, conferences. Technical assistance is what our grant managers do when we're having compliance issues. So they send you a compliance report, and you have issues with data, or you have issues with this or that. They will call you and say, we need to meet on such and such date, we're going to do some technical assistance. Okay, so it's, and we'll discuss in a minute, is reactive compliance focus, whereas professional development is very strategic, proactive development of capacities. Okay, so that's the difference between the two things. Here, one of the key things I want to mention is that, you know, you will hear about your track designation once we finish the needs analysis. So we go through a comprehensive needs analysis process. We look at your organization. These are all the things that we're going to look at related to your organization. And the result of this is part of the needs analysis. The result of this will be a track designation. The track designation, there are 3 tracks that you can be designated into. Track 1 organizations, typically high-performing organizations that have a lot of experience, that we can see through their track record and through the needs analysis that they need professional development, but not as extensively as the other tracks. If you are at track 2 or track 3 designation, what will happen is that you will receive a coaching plan from us, and it will tell you, you will be required to attend coaching hours. Our coaches, we met 3 of them, 3 coaches will reach out and say, I'm your designated coach, you gotta work with us. You are required, if you're track 2 or 3, to do 10 hours of coaching a month. And so you will have quite a bit of interaction with the coaches. One important thing to keep in mind, I'm not sure that we mentioned this before, but the coaches are required to brief the administration and the CEO about the most specific details about those organizations. Okay, so whatever they're learning in the field, it's not just between you and the coaches. Okay, it's actually coming back to us. We use all of that information to strategize interventions, to see what else is needed, to find out if particular ground management interventions are needed, or if I have to get on the phone with them. Sometimes that's what it takes, right? But anyway, so track 1, track 2, track 3. If you're a track 1 organization, you're not required to do coaching. You can certainly opt into coaching, but you will receive a professional development plan recommendation. So, you know, you can do the training yourself if you need some other things, but we will make recommendations about training you may need through the track. So what is required in terms of professional development if you're in each of those tracks? Track 1 obviously has the lightest load: webinar sessions, annual conference, regional meeting, communities of practice, technical assistance. That's what track 1 organizations have to do. Track 2 organizations, they do all of the above, plus they have to do the 10 hours per month of coaching. That's the difference between track 1 and track 2. Track 2 is already required to do coaching. By the way, all of these things are in your contracts, so you get contracts stipulated there. Track 3, organizations, this is a new track we developed this year based on feedback we received again from grantees. This is a special track that we are testing for the state. Track 3 is also called the Accelerator Program. Some of you might have been offered funding under the condition that you came into the Accelerator Program. This one has some more support because, again, it's organizations that otherwise may not have received funding, but because they agreed to participate in track 3, they're also getting support groups. There'll be support groups they'll attend, peer mentoring. It says monitoring there, but it's actually peer mentoring. So we're going to connect you with other grantees that do a good job in different areas. So that, they will also receive that, and they will receive anywhere between 10 to 20 hours of coaching per month. Okay? The whole objective of track 3 is that after 1 year of being part of track 3, if they're offered renewal, that they'll either become a track 2 or track 1 organization. Ideally for us, all of our grantees would operate at track 1, but realistically, we know because we're a developmental program that we will always be bringing in track 3 organizations to develop their capacity so that they can move off the development ladder. Any questions about these trends in the professional development? So all the people that you see sitting at that table are all part of the professional development and technical assistance system. So, you know, they will definitely engage you and provide support for you. So what is it exactly that we're talking about here when it comes to all of these events, okay? All of these different interventions when it comes to professional development. The webinar sessions are, again, opportunities where we provide very particular training related to IWRS, the grantee manual, very particular training related to requirements, how to obtain certifications for your trainers, effective transition services, utilizing data to create program improvement plans, among others. So you will see all of these webinars being announced, and you can register in our partner guide that Dave just discussed. Keep in mind, webinar sessions are a requirement for everybody. Toolbox Tuesdays, as I mentioned earlier, are events that we do typically the 3rd week of the month. They're not required, they're 1-hour events, any staff member can attend, and these are on topics that are relevant in that particular moment in time. Communities of practice, I don't know how many of you have heard of communities of practice? Okay, good. So these are interventions that we use particularly to support certain groups within communities of practice within our system that require more assistance, transition services, for instance. Anybody working in transitions, they're part of the community of practice. They share resources, ask questions from each other. There's a platform that gets used to share resources. We'll provide resources ourselves, bring in speakers, connect them to various resources. The same goes for instructors, the instructor community of practice. And the new one this year is the wraparound service coordinator community of practice. What we have noticed is that although we have a very generous system for wraparound services, they are being underutilized. And in fact, the evaluation that NIU conducted last year of our program showed that for some reason, some of the people that were getting the most intense wraparound services in our system were the least successful individuals among the worst. And I had a call from the White House. And I was like, how did you find out anyways? I don't know how I did it up. They were like, how come in your program, wraparound services is showing opposite of what we assume is the case, right? The assumption is the more wraparound services, the more successful the individual. Really what works, the more wraparound services, the least successful the individual. So how is that possible? So we have to create a community of practice around that because I don't want to be getting a call from the White House to respond about what's going on, although that is a very interesting question. Why? Any of you that have worked in workforce development, you've heard for decades, the more wraparound services you provide, the more generous it is, the more success you have, right? Am I right? Well, guess what? That's not what our data shows. Okay, so there's a community practice around that. The other one is program coaching. Program coaching is very, very important for us. And as I mentioned, it's required for track 2 and track 3. One key thing about program coaching, as I said, it's strategic, it's proactive, it's not reactive. And as a result, it has nothing to do, or it has something to do with technical assistance because they talk to each other. But the approach itself is not to be about compliance, it is more about developing the capabilities of programming. Okay? Now, when it comes to program coaching, all technical assistance is delivered by full-time staff of DCO
all of it being grant managers and myself. All of the coaching is done by NIU consultants that are not staff of DCO. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure our grantees don't confuse technical assistance, which is compliance, with coaching, right? So you will notice that all of the coaches are NIU consultants working on that effort. The other thing I want to mention about program coaching, they are not programmatic staff and they cannot help you do your program. You need to do your program. They can coach you, but they cannot do the programming for you. And believe me, I'm saying that because we have gotten requests about that. It's not possible to do your programming. In-person events, the annual conference, it's very, very important. Where's the annual conference?
In person.
Okay, in-person events. So there are, besides this event today, where we want to make sure we met everybody, there are 2 in-person events that you'll be required to attend. The annual conference, again, I mentioned earlier, happening in October, and the regional meeting and the annual conference happens in Central Illinois, and the regional meeting that happens here in the metro area in Chicago, and that is typically happens in April or May. Okay, it is very important that you ensure that the appropriate staff attend professional development. Unfortunately, with the exception of Toolbox Tuesdays, it is required, okay? So during grant negotiations, and I was part of a lot of those grant negotiations, we said, you need to make sure you have money in your budget for all of this, right? So if you don't have money in your budget for all of that, we need to raise the flag very quickly. Steve particularly, and Dan were watching it very closely and saying, hey, you don't have money for this stuff, put it there. Because what I cannot hear is, can't go because we don't have money. We're like, well, we really want to make sure that you're here, so make sure that you have the money. When it comes to technical assistance, one last thing to mention is that typically is, as I mentioned, as needed, right? So don't expect to be having technical assistance with your grant manager every month. If you don't need it, you don't need it. Now, it could happen because the grant manager says, this is your compliance report, you need technical assistance. Or if you yourself look at your compliance report and you're like, this makes sense, I need technical assistance. Then you reach out to your grant manager and they will coordinate it. Technical assistance is one-on-one or small group type of environment, right? So it's not typically with other grantees involved. And we do a lot of technical assistance every year. So again, just to emphasize the difference between technical assistance and coaching is proactive, it's prevention, is mitigation, whereas technical assistance is course correction. The other thing that is important about coaching is that it's scheduled regularly, whereas technical assistance is done as needed. And again, technical assistance is delivered by our staff, particularly our grant managers, and coaching is delivered by NIU's consultants. Any questions about that very robust professional development system? I know it's not. I understand, but believe me, it has been very, very helpful for my grantees as they move forward. Any questions or comments? Because I am going to talk about now what you all have been waiting for. The reimbursement. Yes.
So at a certain point, we realized that we did not budget enough for training. Are we able to do a budget commission and move some funds from maybe other expense lines if we realize that someone with someone and who up to training?
So I will talk about that in a minute. Budget modifications, although we will qualify those. Those are available. You can certainly do them, but anybody that has done a budget modification with the state will tell you that it tends to be a pretty painful experience. So we try to make sure it's very good at the very beginning because it's not just painful because of the process. It's painful because of the timeline. And when we get to that, I will mention that, okay? But certainly, you can certainly do that, okay? Or you can use leverage resources if you have the opportunity to do that. I will mention now OGM because this will become part of the conversation in the next 30 minutes. The Office of Grant Management at DCO. They're the ones that typically manage all the, if you work with OGM, you know how they operate.
The bottom line is, so that you should know, okay? When a grant is set up, at least right now, this year will work like that. When a grant is set up, they're the ones that set it up. They're the ones that process the agreements. They're the ones that establish your budget. And they're the ones that you have to submit your reports to, PFRs and PRRs, and we'll talk about those in a minute. They will check them, they will verify them. If they have questions, they'll ask the questions. They ask for backup, they ask for all kinds of things, right? When you're talking about OGM, they typically assign what they call a grant manager. Don't confuse that with the Illinois Works grant manager. You will notice in the grantee manual, we constantly use the word Illinois Works grantee manager. Different than the OGM grant manager. Different ones. If you think that you're executing certain transactions with your Illinois Works grant manager, when you're actually executing them with OGM, it's gonna be a problem, okay? Because that causes all kinds of delays, all kinds of disconnections. We gotta get involved to deal with it. We work in partnership with OGM, but we're not doing their job. They're the ones that execute it, right? Any questions about that? Now, I can tell you that we are supposed to transition all of the work that OGM does for Illinois Work. We're supposed to transition it into Illinois Works this year. So that next program year, you wouldn't have two grant managers, you only have one. But it's not there yet, okay? And we have a timeline, and we have a system on how that's gonna happen, but we will let you know in the third quarter if we successfully did that transition when we have the administrative meeting. Yes?
Question, since Illinois Works, we are a workforce investment agency,
Sure.
we have 13. So when they come for our annual monitoring, will this program be included in that?
No. Yeah, no, the reason, that's a very good question, though. Anybody else has that situation, let's make sure we discuss. You're all the way at the oversight of OET. Julio's, right? We call it Julio's. Okay, OET. Yeah, Office of Employment and Training, Julio's shop. Yeah, so that's internally how we call it. They will follow their processes, procedures, auditing practices based on their funding requirements. You have funding for them, they're gonna look at that, right? Illinois Works is not part of it. Any monitoring that we do, we will announce it directly. It'll be directly through Illinois Works, and we will not look at Julio's shops. That's it. The only reason why we may look at that is if you're leveraging funding. And at that particular point, we have conversations internally. If they find something out, or we find something out, then we have to communicate. But that's the only reason, not because it's a standard procedure for me to look at his stuff or them to look at our stuff just because we're leveraged. Okay? Okay. Okay, great. How many of you have heard of GATA? Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. Anybody that has done grants in the state of Illinois, you know that's the law that regulates grant making, grant management, and all of it related to grants with the state of Illinois. Illinois Works has to follow GATA, okay? So there are some important items related to GATA that you need to keep in mind before we talk about reimbursement, because here is one key thing related to GATA, okay? If you don't follow GATA standards, I can't pay you, right? There's nothing I can do for you. GATA regulates us, right? So it's very, very important that you follow GATA requirements, okay? And I will mention in a minute what some of those requirements are. You need to make sure that your GATA profile is up to date. If your GATA profile is not up to date, you get blocked. And who knows what happens when you get blocked? You don't get paid. Okay? You cannot get funding from anybody in the state of Illinois. More importantly, if any of you has not blocked it down, you should know it's painful to get you online. So my recommendation is do not let yourself get blocked or locked in GATA, because then Dan has to intervene, Steve has to, we actually have an internal report called what, Steve?
It is the God and branch study.
For short, we call it what? The Steve. Okay, and what does that report do, Steve?
It tells us that you have been misbehaving, not submitting your performance and financial reports, time or accurate.
And if you're blocked or not blocked,
Audits in the organization, you would say audit, there's a laundry list of issues that can get you on the report. And like Norman was saying, the thing you want to do is just do work fast, not get on that.
It's, and if I may, we can't execute your grant agreement next month, or, as we go through, if you go on that list right now. So, not only, like in June, if this were to happen, you couldn't get reimbursed, but you can't get, an agreement executed if you're on.
and we cannot renew you even finance if you're on finance. So the Steve report is a standard rolling item on our weekly agenda of finance. Okay, Steve, where are we with that? We have a repeat test, where are we? And then we identify organizations and then work with them. But by the time we're on that list, I'm telling you, I don't, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything. It is painful, okay? So, it's called the stop payment list, right? If you're on the stop payment list, it's complicated, yes.
So another grant in our organization could get us a situation where
Yes.
if we are performing beautifully, okay.
So now you gotta keep in mind, I know the grant cannot affect your compliance,
Right.
but it can affect your standing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can block you, and I know, particularly the larger organizations, you have 20, 30 grants with the state, oh, believe me, you gotta watch those closely. Yes,
So in our data compliance, we are required to do a couple of AUP, agreed upon procedures. Would Illinois work require that?
no, the only thing that we want you to do is whatever your requirements are to keep your data account free of problems, just do that.
Okay.
If you can keep it online, that's all we care about, okay? So you can get more information at the grant portal, the data grant portal. We did send you a link for that on the email that we sent you, so you can certainly read more about that and know how to go about it. There are two key importance reports that if you've used what data before, you have to do. One is called the periodic financial report, and then the periodic performance report, okay? Now, let me deal with the easy ones. Dan mentioned this earlier. The PPR, what we call the PPR, that's a data report. Your contract will say you have to submit it on a quarterly basis unless you're considered a high-risk organization, and then your contract will say you have to submit it on a monthly basis. So, depending on what your contract says, you submit that report, but you do not have to attach any data because the data that report will recognize is all the reporting you're doing through IWRS that we mentioned. As long as you're doing your reporting in IWRS, and by the way, we didn't mention this, but your reporting in IWRS is supposed to be real. Okay? Not this thing of 3 months later, I have to submit a report. Let me enter everything, and that does not work for us. Okay? IWRS is real time. You need a data entry person that keeps your system updated all the time, okay? So that when we do our monthly compliance reports, we can pull the data real time, okay? So that's your periodic performance report, no big deal there. Your financial report, on the other hand, that's the one that is complicated. You have to follow OGM standards for that. And I'm sure once you find out who your OGM grant manager is, you'll find out everything that they're gonna want from you. The other thing you gotta keep in mind about that one is, depending on your risk factors, your contract may say quarterly financial reports. We encourage our grantees to submit their reports on a monthly basis. Why? Cash flow reasons, right? Cash flow reasons. And here's where one secret comes from the state. Those of you that work with the state, you know this, but if you have never worked with the state, you will learn this one. And learn it quickly. The state shuts down at the end of June for financial closing. We know when it shuts down. We don't know when it comes up. Okay? Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Sometimes it's 3 weeks. Sometimes it's 2 months. If you are submitting your reports on a quarterly basis and it didn't get processed before that, you are not getting any money until the system goes up again. And that may be months later, right? So I really encourage you, and it is true, nowadays the state pays on time, very quickly. However, you're not submitting your reports on a monthly basis, you're gonna get caught in that cycle. The other thing that may happen, and I'll deal with that in a minute, is this whole issue about, if you want a modification to your budget. Well, modification to your budget will stop any payments until the modification is approved or denied. So if you start a modification process and ultimately it gets denied, you got stuck there. You can't get paid in the process that's going through, okay? So as a result, yes, we'll talk about modifications in a minute. We don't encourage them, but you certainly have a right to do them, okay? So any questions about those GATA reports? PPR, PFRs, very important. We recommend that you submit your PFRs on a monthly basis for reimbursement. In fact, OGN will process them for you on a monthly basis. They typically wouldn't, but for Illinois Works, they will, just for cash flow reasons, okay? Okay, so the GATA website, again, we provided that information for you. Appropriate use of funds for Illinois Works, okay? You can only use Illinois Works funds for implementing, I apologize, I'm getting behind here with the.
There we go.
Yes. Going back to the PFRs, are they still the 15th for today?
You can submit them up to what's the standard, 30 days after?
Yeah, well, so, each individual grantee is gonna have their own, timeline. Some, will have a little bit different than others, so, but it is 30 days after your organization's due date, but it's due, for Illinois Works on a monthly basis.
So like a 30th of the month.
Just a backtrack.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when yours is due, but it's due 30 days after. And you'll be late 30 days after that.
Okay, so as I mentioned, appropriate use of funds, if it's out of your budget and it's an allowable cost, the grantee manual will cover this, one of the webinars, has all the information there about what's allowable for Illinois Works. If it's on your budget, it's allowable, then you can certainly use the money, okay? If you have any questions whatsoever about that, you need to contact the grant manager. There are times when we get organizations getting very creative about wraparound services, and we encourage creativity. I like innovation. But don't think that just because it's wraparound services that you can just go and spend money. Example, we got a call from one grantee saying, one of our graduates got accepted into a DO registered apprenticeship program and just received an invoice for $1,000 to start a program. Like, we didn't know that. Did you know that there are DO registered apprenticeship programs that once they accept you, they charge you $1,000 to start a program? There you go. Completely new to us. They're like, can we pay for this? We had an internal discussion and then we discussed it with legal because some of those things are already bordering on, can we do it based on the law that regulates, right? We had a discussion with legal and they said proceed, so we said proceed. We pay $1,000 for that, what happens to be a lady that had graduated from one of our programs. We don't want her losing out on that opportunity. But completely, never heard of it. Have you ever heard? There you go. There's a lot of times where we hear all kinds of interesting things like work keys. We just discussed internally that there is a DO registered apprenticeship program that requires for you to apply to have taken the work keys exam. Very unusual, right? So we had a discussion and that was approved to proceed. So if there are things like that that you come across, you need to let your brand manager know. Right? Because we will have an internal discussion and then check with legal to see if it's okay for us to proceed. It's not about money. It's about, can we legally do that, right? And be able to pass an audit ourselves. So if it's on your budget, if it's allowable, proceed. If you have questions about it, just check with your grant manager. Okay?
And Norman, if I may, pre-approval is key. It is so important. This past year, we had an instance where, there was supportive service that a grantee wanted to provide. They weren't sure if they could. So the participant's mother paid for it, and then they were seeking reimbursement from us afterwards. And we cannot reimburse them. Right, so it would have been allowed if the organization, had waited for us, they paid for it, we'd have been able to reimburse them. And they, but, so this is not a system where, you can ask for it after the fact. Pre-approval is key.
And then just one little comment here, when you do things like that, and you ask for a receipt, gotta make sure that we can see on the receipt the name of the provider, who they provided the service to, the dates. I can't read a receipt that says you owe me $1,000 because I did this. It's not gonna work. It's just that simple, right? It doesn't pass audit here or anywhere, right?
I would just offer to that the expense needs to be,
Yes.
needs to make the reasonability.
That is important because we still are regulated by federal standards when it comes to a lot of this stuff. It needs to be a reasonable expense, right?
Everybody should receive a gas, a bus card. It's not reasonable.
It's not reasonable, exactly based on need, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Steve. Great topic, budget modification. Okay, so you are allowed to do a budget modification, okay? Have the right to do that. Do we encourage it? Not really. For the reasons that I just mentioned. Long process. And, but if you absolutely have to do it, then we're gonna do it. Now, I can tell you that when we offer you renewal, we will pass you through a budget modification ourselves, okay? So you will have to go through that. And you have to go through the process of submitting documentation for that. But if you want to start one, you can certainly do that. But let me just go over the process, okay? You have to submit a budget modification form in the correct template that the state will accept. And you have to send that to your Illinois Works grant manager. We have instances of grantees calling and saying, I started a budget modification 3 months ago, and what happened to it? Well, who did you send it to? OGM, wrong process. Then we have to go and try to find it with OGM, because that's the wrong process, because they don't initiate budget modifications, it's us. We're the ones that initiate it, your grant manager. Yes, ma'am.
When will we know exactly who you're gonna get here?
Next week, you'll know who your grant manager will be, yeah. So if you start a budget modification, you really want a budget modification, that's fine, but you have to work with your Illinois Works grant manager. We would then meet internally, discuss the budget modifications and make sure that it passes the standards and makes sense, or if we have questions, we'll ask the questions. Once approved, it goes to OGM, the OGM grant manager, and they may have their own questions related to the budget modification. And then they pass it through the process, okay? Now, again, how long does that take? 4 to 6 weeks in a standard procedure. May take longer. We've seen budget modifications take 8 weeks, sometimes 12 weeks. Remember, as long as your budget modification is in process, they cannot pay you anything. It stops any transacting with OGM, okay? You need to continue to submit your reports and your expenses to OGM, but you're still not getting paid because there's a budget modification that put everything on hold. Any questions about that? Yes.
Budget modification is approved, are we able to backfill, prior periods based on the grant and?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you certainly can. And for larger organizations, that's no big deal because they have cash flow. For smaller organizations, being without funds for 3 months, it's a big problem, right? So as a result, that's the reason why I'm raising the flag.
Do you want me to advance?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Okay, advances. So yes, you are able to get an advance up to 10% of your grant award. When can you get an advance and how it works, okay? So if you can only get an advance the first year in the system. You cannot say the first year I will need an advance, I need one the second year. State doesn't allow it. So right now, for you that are new, you can request an advance, okay? Up to 10%. And I'll discuss in a minute how that works with the accelerated program, but up to 10%, you can get an advance. Up to 8%, I apologize, it's an advance. However, here's one thing you should know about your advance. A lot of times, people want an advance yesterday. It takes several weeks to process the advance. Typically, what we have seen is that it takes anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks for you to receive an advance. What you gotta do is that you gotta write in your letterhead, letter that says, I want an advance for my grant, send it to your grant manager. Your grant manager will then work with OGN to process that. We'll let you know if it's approved or not. But even after we say, yeah, it will happen, you will not see the money until 4 to 6 weeks later. Okay? Any questions about that?
And I should note that we did reach out to all the organizations, and I had already requested that, so anyone that has requested the advance, it is being included as part of your grant agreement.
Okay, so that's already processed. And needless to say, you need to follow the procurement policy of the state. I would really encourage you to look at that policy because sometimes grantees get in trouble because of procurement, not following the procurement policy. Okay, by a show of hands, who has ever used a performance-based grant in the past? Some of you, okay. So performance-based grants, how do they work? And I know there are a lot of concerns about these grants. I use performance-based grants for 20 years. City of Chicago, I do a lot of work for the City of Chicago, was all performance-based. There are some very important practices to follow in performance-based grants, okay? So Illinois Works is a performance-based grant. What does that mean? We do this to ensure that that we actually get the outcomes that we need for this system, okay? So performance-based is to ensure that we're not paying and not getting outcomes. That's the reason why this works the way it works. Sometimes it may be challenging, particularly for organizations that are not performing well. And we'll discuss in a minute why that is. It's important to keep in mind. So let's assume that through your performance, you generate $600,000 worth of revenue. Okay? If you don't have $600,000 worth of expenses, you cannot use the $600,000. So once you've generated your expenses, you have to submit allowable and budgeted expenses, right? You see how it works? Because God does not allow for us to pay without you incurring the expenses and us reimbursing. So it's a performance-based model, but it's based on reimbursement, right? So you have to have expenses for you to get reimbursed for that. That's the reason why I said a lot of our grantees left money on the table. They generated a lot of money, but they didn't have enough expenses to use the money. And as a result, it was left on the table. Okay, so our belief is that grant funding should produce tangible benefits for the community. And as a result, our performance-based model, goes and focuses on particular metrics, right? Before I go into the metrics, I want to mention a couple of things that are important about our model that are different than other performance-based models, okay? One is, if you exceed your metrics, you can earn funding beyond the original grant amount. Let's assume that you're a superstar, okay? And we do have some programs that exceeding all the time. We gave them $500,000, they can end up with 550, 560, 600,000. Because their performance is so good that we don't limit you to that $500,000, okay? So if you want to be one of those superstars, that's what we want, you are welcome. We always have a certain amount of money we keep to be able to give more money to grantees that are superstars and that are performing great, right? So that's a unique thing about our model, how Illinois works. The other thing is because we use a real-time reporting system with IWRS, you can submit your reimbursements on a monthly basis and OGM will process them on a monthly basis. Okay? So that's another thing that's important about our model. And the third thing is, if you truly feel that there's a special circumstance, I want to emphasize this, beyond your control, or why you missed a certain metric, you are welcome to submit an appeal. Okay? We will consider appeals. We said, you don't meet this metric, but you're not, we have good reasons for that. Then submit an appeal, and we will take a look at those appeals, okay? So those are the three key things about our model that you should know. It's a little different than what other models will use. Funding benchmarks, Dan, do you mind? So these are the funding benchmarks that we use: enrollment, completion, transition, and closeout reports. We will assign a certain dollar amount to each of those metrics. We will show you in a minute what the formula is. But what you will notice is that the most important metrics for us are completion and transition, because we want to get outcomes, right? So then, if you don't mind moving to the formula, here's the formula. I can barely see it here, but I'm going to read it on my notes. So enrollment has an allocation of 25% of your grant. Completion has an allocation of 30% of your grant. Transition has an allocation of 35% of your grant. And closeout has an allocation of 10%. You add all of that, that's 100%, right? So these are all funding benchmarks that you will get as part of your, it's in the statement of, it's on their contract, right?
It's in the scope of work.
It's in the scope of work in your contract, okay? You will notice that completion and transition, it's up to 65% of your grant. In other words, we want individuals to successfully complete and to transition. And that carries 65% of all your grant awards, okay? So the two most important benchmarks in our model are transitions and completions. You notice one has 30% and the other one has 35%. You add those two together, that's 65%. Because we don't want you just to enroll people. We want them to successfully complete, and then we want them to successfully transition. So as a result, our formula has a higher allocation for that. Now, I will mention here that Track 3 grantees, which are part of our accelerator program, they have a different funding formula. It's a little different because we are encouraging them to develop, and it's definitely different than the standard funding formula that we use. Now, through your monthly compliance reviews, we will do fund disbursements. In other words, we'll be able to know, and I'll be done in a minute. I know that some of you may be already hungry and we're setting up for lunch. But through your monthly review, we're going to be able to tell you this month you've earned so much when it comes to completion. This month you earned so much when it comes to enrollment. This month you earned so much when it comes to transitioning. This adds up to so much. And then you also get a worksheet that will tell you everything that you have earned for the year. It's an aggregate number. You'll be able to know, okay, so far in June, I've earned $200,000 out of $500,000. So far in August, I'll earn so much, And Dan and the rest of the grant managers spend a lot of time looking at your data on a monthly basis. They will announce what date they're going to be pulling data from IWRS. They pull the data, analyze the data, and then issue your compliance reports, okay? Now, how does it work? So if you have, 35% for transitions, how do we make the calculations? We do it per participant. So let's assume that you are, for your grant, you're supposed to transition 30 individuals, okay? So we will divide that dollar amount by 30, and that is the per participant allotment. So you say, John X transition to a DOL registered apprenticeship program, here's the evidence of it, then goes in there, verifies that, and gives you credit for that. then he's gonna be giving you credit for that alignment for that particular individual, okay? The same thing goes for completion. You say, Mary Jo completed our training program. Here's all the evidence that she completed our program. Dan will then check, or Steve will check and see if it's correct that Mary Jo completed your program, and then give you credit. Sometimes, and here's where it's important to discuss this quickly, sometimes you may make a claim in the system, but we cannot verify. And if we cannot verify it, in their report, they're gonna tell you, you claim this, but we couldn't verify it. Please address such and such thing so that we can verify it. Right? So you have an opportunity to come back and say, okay, yeah, Mary Jo, we were missing this or that. Okay, now here it is. And the next month when they do compliance, they'll catch it. They say, okay, now everything is there for Mary Jo, here's the credit for Mary Jo. Same thing goes for enrollment, right? We enrolled 20 people. Did they follow the whole system for enrollment? Can we verify it? If we do, then they can give you credit for it, okay? So that's the way we do our funding. Now, you will submit expenses to OGM through your PFR. OGM will review those expenses. They will compare those expenses to what we told OGM you have earned, right? So let's assume that by that month, you earn $200,000 through your performance. You submit expenses for 210. What is OGM going to do? Anybody want to take a guess? They will pay you for $200,000, whole 10 of it, until next month, once we do another performance review. Okay? If you submit expenses for 175, but you have 200,000 that you have earned, they will pay you the 75, the 175 if everything passes their standard. And then you have 25 there that carries over to the next month for other expenses. See what I'm saying? So, you know, you want to make sure. So here are some of the best practices very quickly. When you're doing performance-based modeling, what are some practices that you should follow in order to maximize your potential? Practice number one, always over enroll. Always over enroll. Let's assume that your contractual responsibility is to put 20 people in your cohort. You can do that. Because when you over enroll, we have to pay you for that over enroll. Right? The second reason why you over enroll is because the metrics for completion are not based, we're not holding you to how many you ultimately enrolled. We're holding you to the contractual number that you were supposed to enroll. So let's assume your completion at 85% of 20, okay? That's what we're holding you to. And we're gonna say you're complying or not complying in that. But if you over enroll, you can more easily meet that 85% because we're not holding you to 85% of the total that you enrolled, but 85% of what you were supposed to enroll. You see what I'm saying?
And how, if I enroll, so say we're supposed to have 15 people and we enroll 20, I have to pay the college 20 people's tuition and not 15 people's tuition. So where's that extra money coming?
We're paying you for that.
Beyond our grant amount.
Yes, we're paying you for that. So that's the reason why over enrollment, remember I said superstar programs, they end up with a lot more money. You know what are the key things they do? They over enroll. Because over enrollment has a dominant effect for you. It helps you with your completions, and then it helps you with your transitions at the end. If you do not over enroll, let's assume that you're low on your enrollments, then you're really working really hard to meet your metrics for completion and transition, right? Over enrollment by 10%, 20% gives you so much wiggle room to be able to navigate that whole system. So that's one of the practices that they follow, and they follow well. The second practice, yeah.
At some point though, in your example, you may need to do a budget modification though, right? Because you are incurring an expense line item that is outside the budget. So just keep that in mind.
So typically that modification will happen at the end of the year. Once you're renewing you, that's when you do all the adjustments to your budget to take advantage of all of those, or to adjust for all of those things you have to do. Okay. The other thing that it's important here when it comes to best practices, okay, so you overall for sure, make sure you always do that. The other thing is never lose sight of an individual that dropped out. Someone had an issue with a family, health problem or whatever, they dropped out in the middle of the program. Don't lose sight of those individuals. We used to have a system where I used to work where we would re-engage with them. You know, maybe a year later, 6 months later, get to another program, okay? That helps you to, you know, not, 10%, 20% dropped out, you may be able to engage half of those individuals, right? So don't lose sight of those individuals. And then the third thing is what's your name again? Corey mentioned. You know, okay, someone didn't get accepted first round, get them on secondary transition, but keep on working with them to secure that primary transition. If you have an active transition specialist, don't let them go, right? Because the minute they disengage and you're not engaged with them, it's gonna be very difficult. But if you keep on engaging them and then later on, they become a primary transition or an alternative transition, you'll recover the money.
You guys have support for people who, so say somebody was in our area and they do this program and they're in it and they complete, right? And then they move. So where we are, so say then they move to Chicago.
Yeah.
Do you guys have something within the makeup this to help with this? Like, would you guys help us if somebody moves to Chicago? That's for 3 hours away. But
Yeah.
we're help them get into a union in Chicago or in another area, you guys have support for that.
That's through the career services team that I mentioned earlier. They're the ones that come in the picture once you have graduates. Career services will not work with anybody that has not graduated, but if they've graduated, they'll come in contact with them. You can refer them to career services. Okay, so just let's show one of the examples. There you go. So here you go. In this example, you can see how the whole model works, right? Primary transitions, how we pay for transitions, for completions, the dollar amounts. And it's just giving you a sample program. You know, this program is a superstar program. They started with 550 grand. They ended up with 578. But if you look at what they did, is they're over-enrolling from the very beginning, taking advantage of that, not letting go of anybody, doing primary transitions, secondary transitions, alternative transitions, all their closeout money, and they ended up with more money than they would have had if they had not done a good job. So this is what the model is supposed to look like, is you do a good job, you do what you're supposed to do, you can definitely reap the benefits or even just end up with a 550 if that's all you want. As I mentioned, all of this, you're going to be able to see through your monthly reports. Again, once you receive a monthly report, you're going to get a compliance rating that says you're doing excellent progress, good progress, inadequate progress, poor progress. Just as a flag, if you are in poor progress or inadequate progress for a while, you may be flagged to be put on a corrective action plan. Okay? Then the coaches and your grant managers will work with you on that. But typically, if you're doing good progress or excellent progress, then you should not have any problems whatsoever. Two important documents you will receive. You'll receive a payment worksheet and also your monthly compliance report from the grant managers. All of those documents, once you receive them, if you have questions, you can discuss those with them. They'll be more than happy to explain the technical assistance, explain those for you, okay? That's it. Any other questions or comments? Remember, I told you, we're not able to cover everything in detail, but believe me, in the onboarding sections, we will.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks, Norman. This was my first time hearing it too. It was a lot. That was informative. Thank you, Norman.
Yep.
If you pick up your phone and go to the evaluation form. In the afternoon, we're going to have everyone, people who have had the grant before and yourselves. We'll do a lot more getting to know each other, getting to know your grant managers, but we'd love your feedback. As Norman said, we take your feedback into consideration for the future. So please help us to continue to improve how we're doing everything. Thank you. And now we're going to have lunch. Yay!
And are we opening this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, lunch is available out there where we had breakfast. We're gonna be opening up this wall. There's a lot of folks on the other side. There's some of the renewal grantees, that are here for the afternoon session. So it'll be great to meet them as part of that, connecting with others. Those are so important to us. You'll find that in everything we do. But feel free, once you're done with the survey, to grab lunch and, we'll be, moving the room around a little bit.
Any first step?
You can do your stuff. We will be asking people to maybe move the table, eventually, but. Yes.
All right. Oh, hold on one moment, let me, I need to stop this recording. So let me just do that.